Now I will hand over the virtual microphone to Eleanor, and I'm very excited to hear our panel discussion. And Eleanor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olivia, for your introduction, and thank you, Derek, for your very interesting and inspiring, actually, opening remarks. I'm really delighted to moderate today's event on behalf of Global Tech Connect. We have with us such an international audience today: VCs, startup founders, accelerator, corporate innovators. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us. And also, thank you to those who've submitted their questions in advance. We've incorporated them into the discussion. And of course, if you have any further questions to our panelists or to the Global Tech Connect members, please submit them via the Q&A box, and we'll try and address them towards the end. So without further ado, delighted to welcome our wonderful panelists today: Matteo Scarabelli, Head of Investment at Elmarks; Jivan Sanner, Investor at Playfair Capital; Koen van de Kavje, Inward Investment at London and Partners; and George Windsor, Head of Insights at Tech Nation. Really pleased to have you, and thank you so much for your time. I'd like to invite you to introduce yourselves, and by way of introduction, to actually also answer a question. So let's start with you, George. Tech Nation is embedded in the UK tech ecosystem, supporting thousands of startups here. Perhaps you can provide a brief overview from your perspective of the main drivers of the UK success as a global leader in technology.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here. As mentioned, I'm Head of Insights at Tech Nation. As Tech Nation, we're the growth platform for tech companies and leaders, and we operate in a number of different fields, not least providing, I guess, scaling support for companies through our programs. Obviously, I head up the insights function. We have a learning function. As an organization, we really exist to help companies that are headquartered in the UK accelerate their scaling journey and achieve growth. I think, first of all, that's a good point to start on. There are support mechanisms in the UK to enable companies to tap into, I guess, peer support, but also support from dedicated scale coaches to really enable their growth. That's the first point. The second one really ties into what Derek has said about the broader ecosystem. Very right in mentioning the fact that 2019 was a record year, and that we have seen continued investment through 2020. In fact, there's real sort of liquidity in the VC market in the UK at the moment. We've seen 15 rounds over 80 million in 2020 alone, and investment has continued to be high. It'd probably be no surprise to anyone that it's not been quite as high as 2019. We've had a tough year. I think everyone in the world has. But at the same time, talent is an incredibly important part of that mix. The UK has incredibly strong talent, and companies are continuing to hire. That, on the one hand, sounds like that might be a bit of competition, and therefore, is that a good thing? But I think it definitely is. For a company looking to locate in the UK, I think it's really important that many of the scaling companies that we're working with, many of the big corporates that we're also working with, are developing talent that is really providing, I guess, the expertise needed to help companies scale right across that ecosystem. And then I think it goes without saying, really, that the UK is a real hotbed of innovative talent, not least through our universities. And there's world-leading R&D activity happening in spin-outs and universities. And then finally, something that I'll come on to in a bit, I think, is we're really open to global talent. As Tech Nation, we are working with the Home Office on the Tech Nation Global Talent Visa for digital tech. I'll come on to talk about that a bit. But alongside homegrown talent, we're really able to welcome people here and help them grow their businesses. So I think the UK really, truly is one of the best places in the world to start and grow a digital tech company.
Thank you very much, George. Now, Koen, London and Partners are building London's international reputation and really attracting international businesses to choose London as a place to expand to. I would love to know, what are the common misconceptions that overseas founders often hold about entering to the UK?
Thanks, Eleanor. Hi, everyone. So yes, my name is Koen and I work at London Partners. We are the trade investment and promotional agency for London. Yeah, interesting question. I think that probably the first misconception about London, I would say, is that people still think that we don't have nice food, but we have some of the best food in the world from all over the place. So that's one thing. But when it comes to founders, I think one of the misconceptions that I feel that a lot of clients have is There's an apprehension to come to London because it seems like a very big city, which is very established, where there might be ruthless competition, big cities that are not really welcoming, that it's very, very expensive to come to London. But actually, I speak to a lot of companies that when they come to set up here, they found it a very, very welcoming place. I think, first of all, London is a very diverse place. You will find people from wherever you come from that speak in your own language with your own food. We also have a very collaborative ecosystem. So whether you're in fintech or in digital health, or in games, you'll find kind of your tribe, and you'll find people that are very happy to discuss with you, to grab a coffee with you, to share some of their learnings. Quite often, we introduce companies that are looking at setting up in London to other companies from their country or local companies in their sector, just to share some of their experiences. So, and the other thing is, there is actually so much support available. I mean, everyone who's here on the call is there to give support. From my experience, I work a lot in healthcare. So if you're looking to sell into the NHS, for example, there are particular people there that are very happy to have discussions with how do you do that? What's the pathway that help you to understand what your product needs to look like to be able to do that. And people, lots of expertise, actually giving away their time for free quite often. So I think that would probably be, from what clients are telling me, is it's a misconception, and would love to point people in the right direction where they can get all that support.
Thank you very much, and we'll get to that as we continue. Jivan, Playfair Capital is one of the leading seed stage investors in London. So I'm really curious to know, from what you can see now, what are the top factors that ensure business resilience in early stage startups, particularly during this prolonged pandemic?
Thank you, Eleanor, and it's great to join everyone here today. So yeah, my name is Jivan. I'm one of the associates at Playfair Capital. As Eleanor mentioned, we are a pre-seed seed stage fund in London. So we operate at the very early stage. But yeah, to kind of answer the question, Eleanor, I think that in the face of potentially kind of reduced revenues or of customers that some of our portfolio companies, for example, are noticing may not be renewing their contracts or might not be engaging in new contracts, I think there's some really kind of key things that we encourage our startups to look for. One of those, for example, is kind of really focusing on that product market fit. So making sure that you have kind of that stickiness, that user engagement with your product, and you're really addressing the problems and the pain points of the user to give them really every excuse possible to continue using your product and to lower that churn. I think another thing that's coming up is really kind of considering favorable contract terms to accommodate your customers and really to build that loyalty, that relationship, so that COVID, that could translate in renewing that contract or perhaps increasing that contract size. And then the final thing that I'd really say, the kind of the dual effect of really having a burn, and also making sure you have as much cash in the bank as possible as well. Making sure that you're streamlining the business, it's as lean as possible, perhaps holding off on hiring for now, but making sure that you're in survival mode to get through this crisis. Again, is kind of one of the key tips that we're giving our portfolio companies.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Matteo, LMarks are the UK's largest network of corporate innovation labs, and you build partnerships between global startups and corporate brands, ones that are really household names like BMW and Lloyd's. Can you perhaps share with us any major trends that you see now in corporate innovation?
Thanks, Eleanor, and hi, everyone. So, yeah, my name is Matteo, Head of Investment at LMarks. And yeah, we make change happen, particularly within corporates, helping through internal innovation initiatives as well as open innovation initiatives. So connecting the corporates with startups. And about the latter, I think from a corporate perspective, what we have seen is all the innovation probably flowing into three main trends. So one, which is always been there, but is even more present today, is the customer centricity. And this is referring to customer proposition, new digital products, customer journey, both online and offline. This clearly, in consideration of COVID, is super important. The second one is about people first. So people build companies. So everything connected to upskilling, retention, internal collaboration, external collaboration like partnership is central. And I think the last trend, which is started probably a decade ago and is still in its infancy, is automation. So which is connected to both the previous two trends I mentioned, but also standalone as through process automation, robotic process automation, and the upcoming intelligent process automation, which is including machine learning into this process. So I think these are the three major trends we see. So are principally connected to the customer and to internal processes.
Great. Thank you very much. So the UK continues really to be a global leader in technology, attracting international tech talent and startups from inside and outside of Europe. So we've been asked by many of our audience, what are the steps to start here in the UK? So Kun, I'd like to start with you. Every year, London and Partners help hundreds of international businesses to expand to the capital. What are the key steps international businesses really need to consider when looking to set up their business here, and what support do you offer?
Hello. Yes, I think it's a great question. And I think the first thing that companies really need to do is access all the information that's out there. No matter which sector you're working in, there is so much information out there, reports that are written, events that are happening online that are quite often free of charge these days. So it's become so easy to inform yourself about what's happening in your sector and where the opportunities lie. That I think that it's a great point to start to access all that kind of information. And again, these are things that we're very happy to share with companies. I think another thing is talking to people is actually always the best way to understand what you need to do and what you need to consider. Whether it's if you need to decide what your company is going to look like in London and in the UK. How are you going to hire people here? Finding office space, which has just become a lot easier over the past few months, obviously. But also, how do people do business here? Because it might be very different from what you're used to. The business culture might be different. The way people make decisions might be different. So getting an understanding of all these things. Lots of practical things that you have to consider as well. For example, opening a bank account is quite often the kind of the number one thing that people struggle the most with. So getting the information, getting started early and talking to people to understand what you need to do, including companies like ourselves, but everyone who's here on the call, I think is what people should be doing. And we're here for that.
Fantastic. I would also like to mention here actually a new opportunity by the Department for International Trade called the Tech Rocket Ship Awards. And it's open to European and Israeli scale-ups that looking to really establish their presence in the UK. Winners will receive a program that's tailored to their business needs and really connecting them to the UK market. An application is closing on the 15th of November. So if it's relevant for you, please do apply. And Jivan, I'd like to ask you now, Playfair has invested in a number of international startups. What are the considerations that startups outside of the UK really need to take into account when looking for funding here to make that process smoother?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you correctly mentioned, we've made two investments within Fund 2, so only kind of within the last year or so, one that's based in France and the other one that's based in Israel. So we definitely do invest in companies internationally, as a lot of VCs do. Some of the key points that I would consider when coming to the UK. So firstly, some UK funds are mandated to invest solely within the UK. So for example, you have EIS and SEIS funds. These funds essentially are made up of taxpayers' money. They offer tax relief to taxpayers and go on to invest cash in early stage businesses. And these types of funds are only able to invest in the UK. And then similarly, there are also some government funded funds as well, backed by the British Business Bank. And again, what I would just consider with those types of funds is ensure that you have full visibility over whether they are mandated to invest in companies outside of the UK. And if not, it's a potential kind of time wastage for yourself and for the funds as well. I would also consider that the kind of majority of funds within the UK statistically are kind of focused on in the kind of the B2B software space. And from my experience, it tends to be where VCs are the most comfortable in that you have high value contracts, long-term contracts. And so as a result, if you're kind of sitting outside of that B2B software space, I would definitely have a think about how best to articulate that, or what types of funds specifically to approach, be it kind of consumer specific funds, for example. And then the third thing I would say is, as one of the speakers mentioned before as well, is I think if you're coming to the UK for fundraising, the assumption is that you have global ambition, or that the UK is a major global target, major target market for you. And if that's not the case, then perhaps articulate to your potential investors around what the benefit of going to a VC fund over going to a fund that's based in your target market would be. But you know, I would definitely recommend that getting all the connections that a VC would offer you in the country that they're based in is one of the major value adds. So perhaps if the UK isn't a massive strategic angle or next step for you, then perhaps maybe worth kind of really thinking about whether whether UK investment is where to go.
Thank you very much, really helpful. And now moving on to the current opportunities in the UK against the backdrop of the global recession. Matteo, the majority of startups that you work with at Elmarks come from outside the UK. Perhaps you can share a recent case study of a successful partnership that you built between an international startup and a UK corporate, and what we can learn from it.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. And yes, majority of our deal flow is international. So both ourselves and our corporate partners are very open. And I think that getting more familiar with the idea that innovation and change can come from anywhere. For some of our program, we can have the UK deal flow to be as low as 15-20%. So this is a call for all the entrepreneurs in the audience. So 80% of our deal flow comes from outside the UK. So there's a real opportunity here and many connections. I think as an example, I could mention a company called Parcel, which is a supply chain data platform. They're based in the US. They joined, I think, the first cohort of the Lloyd's of London Lab, so around a year ago. Our programs usually last around 4 months. The part of the first cohort, and they joined the lab at a slightly advanced stage. So they already had a product in the market, clearly only with local customers in the US. And by the end of the program and in the following months, they signed a few contracts within the Lloyd's of London market, so with a few insurers. But what's more important, over the coming months, they've been working on a new joint proposition with some of the insurers. And I think exactly a year later, so April 2020, they launched the first parametric solution for the cargo market. So basically, IoT technology applied to a market they were very knowledgeable about, which is the cargo for perishable goods. And what is even more interesting, so this collaboration keep going on, so those are not limited to the lab, because recently they also announced this technology with the insurance angle will be adopted also for the COVID vaccine distribution. So it's an ongoing relationship that we nurture from the beginning and also in the coming months and hopefully years.
Very interesting and really helpful to bring these examples to life. Now, George, a lot has been said about the value for international startups coming to the UK, whether it's highly skilled workforce, competitive taxes, financial incentives. Perhaps you can share what programs does Tech Nation offer to support UK startups, especially during this economic downturn?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, we have a number of programs. They range from sort of very early stage scaling, where we have Rising Stars, which is our pitch competition, through to late stage scaling companies. For our program Future 50, where we've had companies like Darktrace, Monzo, Just Eat, Deliveroo go through those programs and really benefited from being part of it, in the sense that they've been able to accelerate their scaling journey. They've been able to network with peers and also receive really incredibly tailored advice from those people that have been there and done it. As an organization, we also, I guess, provide lots of information. In these times particularly, it's really important, I guess, for companies to know what's out there to help them through these tough times. So if you go onto the Tech Nation website, which is technation.io, you can find our COVID-19 info hub. We've got information around things like liquidity, employment, tax, and there are lots of links to how the government is supporting. That's another important part of things. The government really is getting behind businesses, getting behind tech in the UK, and providing, I guess, mechanisms to enable companies to continue their growth despite challenges that they're all facing. As a business, we also want to make sure that we're supporting the next generation, I guess, of aspiring entrepreneurs as well as scaling entrepreneurs. So we have our Digital Business Academy, which sits online and is a series of short courses to enable people to get the skills they need to start and grow a business. So do take a look at that too. I think that the key things that I'd say is that it's about giving founders, it's about giving tech leaders, I guess, both the connections and the knowledge that they need to continue scaling. And as an organization, and with many of the other organizations on the panel here, as well as many that aren't represented on the panel, the UK really does offer a huge amount of information, a huge amount of knowledge, and a huge amount of support for companies looking to headquarter themselves in the UK and set up here. It's important to note that we're also able to introduce companies to, I guess, many other organizations within the ecosystem. We as Tech Nation act as, I guess, a broker, an aggregator of information, and we can connect to investors, to government, to different parts of that ecosystem that could well be important for future growth. So there's a lot out there, and do take a look at the website if you want to be sort of channeled, but then no doubt you'll find lots of other information out there too.
Thank you very much. Jivan, at Playfair, you focus on seed and pre-seed investments across different verticals, health tech, e-commerce, mobility. And I know that you've closed a couple of deals during lockdown, as you mentioned. So when it comes to scouting, due diligence, and decision-making process, how have these changed? How have these elements really changed as a result of the crisis?
Yeah, in all honesty, not a huge amount. And I can only really speak for Playfair. We've moved everything so that it's all entirely remote. We've actually made a couple of investments where we've never met the founders. We only met them after investing in them. And so what that meant is all the way from meeting them for an initial call, all the way to actually signing a term sheet, we hadn't actually physically met the founders. Yeah, I think in terms of kind of scouting, a massive source of deal flow for investors are events. Events such as this one are still taking place, and perhaps you don't have the serendipity of a networking session and being able to bump into investors. But if you're able to get them to demo days and be able to present at events, you will still fall onto the radar of investors. And then, of course, a lot of scouting just generally is kind of done through networks and through kind of people, just generally people in the ecosystem, all of which still happens remotely. So I have a lot of kind of one-on-one catch-ups, for example, with other players in the ecosystem. So yeah, so from a scouting perspective, it's kind of just entirely moved online, I would say. And then from the kind of the due diligence and the decision-making process, again, I would say that not hugely different, other than we've internally and externally just moved it all online. So yeah, no, really kind of positive, I suppose, on that front.
Great. And just a follow-up question from that. I know that quite a few VCs in the UK and especially Playfair are championing female entrepreneurship and diversity in tech. Can you give us a very brief overview of the work that you and other ecosystem players in the UK do to promote diversity and inclusion in tech?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a really kind of hot topic right now in the UK, which I'm really glad about. It's something I'm really passionate about. So I'm actually currently in the process of organising an event for tomorrow and for next week, which is our Female Founder Office Hours events that we're actually doing alongside Tech Nation. And during those events, we'll have 160 founders and we'll be facilitating one-on-one introductions with 60 investors. So in total, it'll be 800 meetings that we'll be facilitating over the next 2 weeks. And we do that every single quarter. So it's something that we're massively invested in as a fund. But even looking outside of Playfair, so Diversity VC is a collaboration. It's a group of investors who have come together who are really trying to push D&I within the VC space. And they've currently come up with a standard way of working for VCs that incorporates processes that ensure D&I. And it's something that a lot of VCs have signed up to. And I think that's really positive because it shows just how important diversity and inclusion is for funds in the UK currently. And then outside of that, there's loads of kind of open pitch events. So 10 by 10 is one example. There's also other funds that are doing office hours, again, for kind of BAME or other ethnic minority founders. So I recently attended an event called Access All by a fund called Force Over Mass, which again was facilitating introductions between BAME founders and investors. And then finally, there's just huge amounts of information. So again, as has kind of been mentioned before, there's just so much resource. And I think that the resource and time that goes into creating reports around investments in diverse founders in the UK is really impressive. So there was a report recently released by Extend Ventures. So if you Google it, you should be able to get access to that as well. And that focus on kind of fundraising for different types of kind of ethnic minority founders. So huge amounts of information, huge amounts of events out there. And of course, you're more than welcome to look into the Female Founder Office Hours event that we're doing as well. And I'm happy to provide more information on that.
That's great. Thank you so much. Now, looking at innovation in London versus the rest of the UK, now clearly a majority of the tech activity is centered around London. In fact, about 70% of capital that's raised for tech companies is in the greater London area. But is it just a London story? George, I know that Tech Nation supports the tech communities across the UK. Are there incentives for startups to set up their business outside of London?
So is it just a London story? The answer is definitively no. It's definitely not. London, of course, is a really important part of the UK ecosystem. And I would say that it's not London versus the rest of the UK, it's London and the rest of the UK, because as an ecosystem, it works very well in harmony. We've seen through our Tech Nation report, and we're refreshing that. We're going to be publishing the Tech Nation report in March 2021, and I think it's going to be an interesting year to look back on. But we saw last year in the report that actually 5 out of the top 20 investment cities in Europe, that's those cities that received the most VC investment, were in the UK, and they were London, Bristol, Manchester, Oxford, and Cambridge. That said, there is also significant strength in clusters outside of those top 5. We saw that Manchester actually grew its investment by 277%, and that wasn't starting from a really low base either. It went from 48 million in 2018 up to 181 million in 2019. There are real clusters of expertise right across the UK. If you take Edinburgh, for example, in informatics and artificial intelligence, Cambridge and Oxford, given the close connectivity with the universities, a lot of deep R&D based activity. You look at Manchester in the Northwest. In fact, we held a roundtable there this morning with a number of stakeholders and investors, and really thinking about e-commerce in Manchester and the unicorns that are based there, not least the likes of the Hut Group that IPO'd earlier this year, making scores of millionaires out of those people that were early starters at the Hut Group, as well as On the Beach and Auto Trader, AO, huge numbers of companies that I guess are specialized in certain areas of tech activity across the UK, which means that actually it really depends on your business. And it's very wise, I think, to take a whole UK view in thinking about setting up here. A final point that I'd make is let's think about talent, particularly in light of, I guess, the changes that have been wrought to the way that we're working and changes to the labor market. Increasingly, I think, and seeing talent as probably the most, if not certainly one of the most sort of important factors for continuing sort of scaling growth and continuing growth for any stage business. Talent is located right across the UK. Talent is, I guess, being generated right through different sort of parts of the pipeline, from schools and colleges through to universities, as well as boot camps and really people transitioning into tech in other sort of stages of their careers. And that's not a London-focused thing either. And increasingly, I think, with the way that tech is actually working and the way that people are operating in tech, we're going to be looking not just in the UK, but actually across the world for talent. The UK is a great place to have that base, I think, given the really innovative talent that we have here.
Great, thank you very much. And Matteo, I know that you are based in London, but actually your headquarters and many of your corporate clients are actually outside of London. So what is your take on it? What are the key geographic spots outside of London that businesses can focus on? Well,
George covered them extensively, but I can only reinforce the same message. So, and there are lots of clusters outside London. They all operate locally, but usually servicing nationwide, and many of them have an international presence. So one of the examples is, for example, mentioned by George, is AO.com. So they're based north of Manchester, I think in Bolton, and they already operate in a few European countries. But probably, I think more than half of our clients are not London-based. So like think of BMW UK, they're based in Hampshire, so which is south. So for international is southwest from London. United Utilities, which is one of the largest water utilities company in the UK, they're based in Warrington, which is between Liverpool and Manchester. And we have a logistic partner, Wincanton, which is towards Bristol again, going towards Wales. So it really depends on the sector you're in, and that there is the right place and the right cluster and the right talent for you. So.
Great, thank you very much. So let's move on to the final part of today's discussion with the UK attracting founders from all over the European Union. You can imagine that we've received quite a few questions about the impact Brexit will have or already has on European startups coming and operating in the UK. And I can see a few here in the Q&A box. So I'd like to talk about the impact Brexit has on recruitment and attraction of talent. And just to say that everything that's being said here regarding Brexit is not representing the stand of the UK government on this matter. So George, Tech Nation has been designated by the Home Office to endorse applications for the Global Talent Visa to help tech talent and founders come and work in the UK. Has this process been affected at all in terms of your selection, criteria, quota?
No, so I guess what I'd say is, first of all, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and we're working with our partners in government in order to make sure that the UK continues to be incredibly open for business in essence, but particularly in the case of tech. And as you mentioned, we're the designated competent body for the Global Talent Visa for Digital Tech. It facilitates people, I guess, coming to the UK. They don't have to set up their own business. They can work for another business. Really, it's a lot of flexibility with the Global Talent Visa. That is an incredibly important part of our migration policy system. But what it is for sure, I guess, is the ambition and the intent is to continue for the UK to be incredibly open and for talent to be able to flow in and out of the UK for that matter. I think it's having that flow, having that, I guess, real ability to share knowledge and to share experience and expertise. And that's very much about what the Global Talent Visa is about, that makes the UK such a rich place. So I think there's certainly going to be more information to come, and more information that will firm up how exactly it's going to work. But the intent is very much there, and I think that's probably the most important thing, is that the UK remains open for business and really is looking forward to people coming here and setting businesses up. It really enriches the ecosystem that we're in. One other thing that I'd mention is we actually have an event coming up on the 19th of November around this, around our Global Talent Visa. So if you're interested, do take a look, and there'll be a lot of discussion around that, and a lot of discussion around, I guess, the mechanisms that exist in the UK to enable people from outside the UK to come here and participate in the tech economy. It's really important, and really a really important part of what we do as Tech Nation.
Thank you very much. And clearly, we can understand that despite the uncertainties of Brexit, we can see that the UK remains the top European hub for technology and innovation. And as mentioned before, 2019 was a record year for VC investments in the UK. We can move on to the final question of today. To close today's event, you each represent different segments of the UK tech ecosystem. So if you could give a single piece of advice to our audience of overseas founders, what would it be? Let's start with Jivan, yes.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I would say, I guess, kind of more focused towards the current climate, but what I would say to startups is definitely just focus on kind of, being lean in this current ecosystem. Focus on kind of just survival mode, really, whilst understanding what the ecosystem of VC looks like in the UK. And fundraising in the UK is definitely slightly more difficult this year than it has been in previous years. It's a slightly longer and tougher process, but there is a huge amount of money in UK VC ecosystem. So please don't let that put you off in any way.
Thank you, Jivan. Kun, over to you.
I would say, I think from the outset, when you're building a team, make sure that you're building a diverse and fully inclusive team. Because we have to get those basics in place to make sure that when you grow your company, inevitably, hopefully, you've got that real kind of strategy and that drive to make sure that everyone who works in your company feels that they're included in the conversation and they can do their best work, and also that you don't always look at the same places for talent. There are talented people all over the place that you can train yourself, or that are part of other networks that you can reach out to. So that would be my top tip.
Great, thank you. Matteo?
Yes, I think my advice would be, if you decide you want to enter the UK market, don't just send cold emails and hope for things to happen. So be consistent, connect with existing networks like the one which are promoting this event, follow the newsletter, connect with people, be consistent, because there are lots of opportunities, but it's your efforts to make them happen as well. Thank you.
And George?
My sort of key point would be look right across the UK, and I think it ties into that question that we answered earlier. There are hotspots and sort of deep pockets of incredible activity that are happening right across the UK, and it would be, I think, short-sighted just to sort of hone in on London. I think London is incredible, and it really is a global hub, but there are amazing places outside of that as well. I also just want to echo the point from Kun. I think that's a really important point, and one that we all need to be thinking about going forward.